This right here, a live look over Jerusalem from one of the many cameras that we have. Now, we did have one a bit earlier on today, and it has gone dark at this point because it's over in Gaza and they do not have power. So this right here is that shot over Jerusalem. A lot of developments happening over the last several hours here. Israel now declaring its northern border with Lebanon as a closed military zone after deadly clashes with Hezbollah. Israel Defense Forces saying as well that 9 rockets were fired from Lebanon at Israeli territory, 5 of those intercepted. I want to talk about all of this as, again, there are a lot of developments. So let's bring in Howard Stouffer, professor of national security at the University of New Haven, to break it all down. Howard, thank you again for taking the time to be here. You have joined us several times over the past several days, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So first off, the tough question here that we get the most is, can you break down how we did get to this point right here?
Well, you know, Israel and Hamas have had conflicts since 2005 when Israel evacuated the enclave of Gaza. They took out all of their settlers, 8,000 settlers. Arik Sharon was the prime minister. And from that point on, there had been incursions that had been, there have been times when the rocket fire had gotten so intense, as in 2008 and then 2014, the Israelis went in for 54 days and tried to suppress the rocket fire and the Hamas leadership that were organizing it. There have been additional times in 2018, 2021, 2022, and now, you know, with this terrible attack that had been planned, and it had been planned in a way that very little has happened since 2021 to give the Israelis the impression that maybe they're making some progress in trying to reach some kind of understanding with Hamas. Hamas totally rejects the idea of Israel. There can be no Israel from the sea to the Jordan River. They believe all of Israel is occupied territory. So when you have an enemy that feels that way and it will do anything to get back at the Israelis, they've been fighting now for a very long time, since that period in 2005. And, you know, we all know the attack on Israel killed 1,300 Israelis. It was planned, executed, complex attack planned by not only Hamas, but probably with Iranian help. Leaders in the U.S. say they have no hard intelligence that Iran was involved, but everybody in Israel believes, and the Israeli military believe, that Iran obviously gave them a great deal of help and assistance in planning this very complicated attack. So now Israel has gathered 300,000 troops, called up 360,000 reserves, and they've pulled all of their hard, tanks and bulldozers and everything else that's needed for a ground incursion into Gaza, on top of the strikes, over 6,000 just as of Friday. I don't even know how many as of today that have been fired upon various parts of Gaza, mainly northern Gaza and the Gaza City area.
We talked about this a bit earlier, but rockets were launched this morning from Lebanon into Israeli territory. Is that Hezbollah, and has this become an everyday occurrence over the last week? Is this something new? Can you break that down for me?
Well, you know, in 2006, there had been skirmishes where Israeli IDF members had been taken and into southern Lebanon, and they were taking them as hostages, and the Israeli military fought back and would not accept that outcome. And so as a result, there was a major scale of fighting in 2006 that ultimately led to vast destruction in southern Lebanon. The Israelis got up to West Beirut, and also caused tremendous damage to Lebanese infrastructure and the city of Beirut. The Lebanese have not really recovered from that since 2006. And now there have been, these exchanges of artillery and rocket fire and mortar fire. And so the Lebanese are, gearing up probably to open up a second front. And we should discuss what the Iranian foreign minister has been saying, despite the fact that the Lebanese foreign minister on Monday said that he does not want to have a war with Israel. But I think events are out of his control, and it's really up to the terrorist group Hezbollah, which has 100,000 fighters and thousands of rockets ready to fight Israel, this would be a major development.
And we know that Israeli troops are set up at the Gaza border for an offensive by ground, air, and sea. What does something like that look like, and is that likely to happen soon?
Well, I think the Israelis are still waiting for civilians to evacuate Gaza City and move south. There are reports that the Israelis have agreed to turn on the water in the south. The Gazan authorities say that they need electricity in order to run the systems and get water into the south. It's probably a very smart move to get civilians out of northern Gaza and have them move to southern Gaza. So they're giving them more time to do that, and that's one element of all these preparations. When the incursion occurs, will be a choice made by the IDF and the political leadership of Israel. Meanwhile, the United States is sending a second carrier group, as the first carrier group by the Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier is already on station off the coast of Israel. The second one is coming, the Dwight Eisenhower, with all of its ships that carry cruise missiles and destroyers that carry missiles. Meanwhile, the United States has been augmenting its aircraft in the entire region. A-10s, the Hogwarts, which are used for supporting fighting on the ground, are being sent into the region, as are F-35s, F-15s, F-18s, F-16s. So the United States is building quite an air armada. In the event, it won't fight the war for Israel. But if other actors begin to expand the war, especially if Hezbollah starts firing its tens of thousands of rockets into northern Israel, Israel is prepared to strike back. But if there are additional attacks, if Iran itself gets involved, then the United States will, obviously, the president will have to make a decision on what we do, and we will be prepared militarily to do it.
As I mentioned, a lot of developments coming in over the last several hours, past 24 hours or so. Israeli Defense Forces did tweet out Ali Khadi led the inhumane, barbaric October 7th massacre of civilians in Israel. We have eliminated him. Is that a significant death? What do we know, if anything, about this person that they tweeted about? Because a lot of folks out there were messaging us and thought maybe he's the leader of Hamas overall, and now he's been eliminated. That's obviously not the case. So can you break down what we know?
Well, he's pretty much a shadowy figure. He's one of several individuals that have been named as the planners for these attacks that occurred on Israel. And, I guess the Israelis are able to confirm that they know where he was, and they destroyed the building or house that he was in the last 24 hours. There are obviously other Hamas leaders they want to go after. I mean, one of the objectives of an Israeli incursion would be to take out the Hamas leadership and to take out their military capability, which raises the whole question about the tunnel warfare. That is another huge problem that arises because the Israelis were caught by surprise in 2014. They went into Gaza, and then all of a sudden there were these literally kilometers of tunnels where fighters were coming out and attacking them and then going back into these tunnels. The Israelis were not prepared to fight in the tunnels. Now they know that they've mapped out many of these tunnels are not just short distances. We're talking about dozens and dozens of kilometers of tunnels, that billions of dollars that have been given to the Hamas over the years, mainly by Qatar and other countries that were trying to give them a humanitarian aid. The money was pouring in to build the tunnels made of cement and metal, and to build particular stations underneath hospitals and schools and mosques. These are like, command and control stations in these tunnels. And so the Israelis have been seeking out where these tunnels are located. They've been trying to map them out. There could very well be hostages in some of them. And of course, there are going to be Hamas fighters in all of them. And these tunnels will be wired like they were in Vietnam. You go into these tunnels, and in fact, it even goes back to medieval times. When you have tunnel warfare, you set up booby traps and explosives. And there are special forces in the Israeli military that are like, they're called tunnel rats or hogwats. And they know how to go into these tunnels and work their way through them and conduct fights against the enemy in these tunnels. But it's not an easy operation. It's going to cause a lot of casualties. And it's going to be very tough because, the Hamas have built their command and control structures underneath their hospitals, particularly the main hospital in Gaza, which did not shut down and is still treating thousands of people. They have a command and control center underneath that hospital. So the warfare is going to be very complex. The Israelis have already said that they've already sent in reconnaissance units to take a look at where they're going to go. I'm sure they've also sent in special forces that are looking for the hostages. And they're also probably planning, they're not going to fight street by street, house by house. That would be a losing proposition for Israel. They're going to have a specific route that they're going to take, and they're trying to map out what that route should be. And it may very well, if an area is free or mainly free of civilians, then they may take a particular street and go through that street, knowing if there are tunnels there as well. So we're talking about a highly complicated ground incursion. From the air, I'm sure there will be plenty of air cover for the troops that would go in. And from the sea, there probably will be, small ships that will land on the coast and move inland as well. And it looks like the Israelis want to target, the northern part of Gaza. The southern part of Gaza is where they're asking civilians to go. They are turning on the water, which makes sense. And there might be some aid that would be allowed from El Arish that Jordan and other countries have been flying into the main city in northern Sinai, which is about 37 kilometers from the Gaza border. And there's an opening called Kareem Shalom, where they may allow food aid or medical medicine to go in through that particular opening. But all that depends on just, how the Egyptians react, how the Hamas react, and how civilians are able to get assistance in the south, but not in the north. If they're in the north, they've been warned that they need to move and get out if they can. So we're talking about the complexity of 2023 warfare in an urban environment that's highly hostile.
All right, Howard Stouffer, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and help break down this subject. We know there is a lot to this, so it's very easy for somebody to miss something. So I'm glad that you're able to come on here and help kind of catch people up. Is there anything else that you want to talk about here before I let you go? Because, again, so many developments coming in pretty much on an hourly basis.
Well, I will only say that our Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, has been all over the region. He's been to Jordan, he's been to Saudi Arabia. He's back in Tel Aviv tonight, and there might be understandings that could be worked out with Egypt. He's been in Egypt, of course. And I think, our diplomatic efforts are going to be going in parallel with Israeli military efforts. And I am sure that our military and their military are going to be working out ways to code each other so that our planes and their planes, if our planes get involved, because the war expands both to Lebanon and the border with Israel, and possibly in Syria and the border with Israel and the Golan, and even beyond that, if missiles start getting fired from Iran itself, we need to have ways to disengage and make sure that we don't, harm each other's aircraft, like we do in NATO, where there are certain codes sent to each other to say this aircraft is friendly and is part of an integrated plan. So there's just a lot more going on. I think we have to wait and see and see how this all develops.
All right, Howard, that is very true. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Josh.